What is going on, guys? Stock Easy here, and I got the Leica M10-R with me today. This is an incredibly taxing video to make. I've tried to do this about 5 or 6 times now, and each time has presented a new issue, sound issues, video recording issues. One time I had a giant piece of lint on my face, so I had to refilm it so many times, and I think all of that can be taken as a sign because I told myself I would never make a camera review, especially for something that I haven't owned for years. Also, taking into account that this is probably one of the more difficult cameras to review. Each iteration of the M series cameras is so specific and oftentimes just a very subtle fine tuning. So trying to review these cameras proves to be quite difficult at times. So I've kind of struggled with what to say about this camera. And in fact, I'm gonna try and make this as short and sweet as possible. I don't wanna really dive too much into specs or anything like that. That's not what I do. But what I will do is show you guys a couple files. I'll make a print today. I'm gonna talk about the 3 things that you guys probably only care about, which is the ISO performance of this camera, the color rendering, and the resolution. The shooting experience hasn't changed much from the M10 or the M10P, so if you are familiar with the rangefinder manual focus style of this camera and its buttons, then this should not be a hard sell for you. But maybe you could save some money and get the M10 or the M10P, so hopefully I can answer that question for you today. I don't want to talk too long about these cameras in this review, so before I get into this and hop on the computer with you guys, I just kind of want to talk about why I've been choosing to shoot Leica lately and why these cameras to me are a pretty good investment as opposed to shooting with other camera brands. Quick story, tale of 2 cameras. About a year ago, I bought a Leica QP, which technically is a 5-year-old camera that was refreshed in 2018. The matte black QP had some refinements to it, but for the most part, it had the same guts. That camera is still in very high demand today, and when I bought it in E+ condition from Adorama for $3,000. I don't think the camera had ever been used. There wasn't a single fingerprint, smudge, scratch, or anything like that on the body. I used it for a year, put all my stank on it, and eventually sold it again. And I ended up making $300 on eBay off of that sale for the Leica QP. I made $300 off of a used camera, which is crazy to me. A year before that, I ended up buying the GFX 50R, which now is a 2-year-old camera. Incredible sensor, incredible image quality, color rendering, everything about that camera I absolutely loved, except it was more niche than I wanted it to be. I thought I would use it more than I did, but oftentimes I felt that it was holding me back. I wasn't doing the type of work that I think that camera would be best suited for. So I decided to sell it with all its lenses. When I bought that camera 2 years ago, I paid almost $7 grand for it with a couple of lenses. The body was selling for, I think, about $5,000 brand new, close to $5,000 brand new. I recently sold it on eBay with a lens that I'd pay $1,000 for. 2 years after it had come out, $4,000. I lost about $2,000 on the sale for that camera. So, does that even matter? Not necessarily. Food for thought. If the Fujifilm X100 series of cameras didn't have autofocus on it, how many of you would buy an X100 or an X100S or an X100T? Some of you do, but not at the rate that people are looking for old Leicas. You see the MP240, the MP262s, even the M9s, they all still go for quite a lot of money on eBay, and people are willing to buy 5, 6, 7-year-old cameras because they know the experience they're gonna get is close to something like this. Because each iteration of the cameras doesn't go so far as to make the last model obsolete. It's just a fine-tuning of things, a refinement, if you will. I believe that if the X100 series had a focus tab, manual focus, a lot more people would be talking about the original ones because they like the rendering of the sensor opposed to talking about how much faster the X100V's autofocus is. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I try not to subscribe to the hype of all of the additive bells and whistles. I know that I can make an image without a flip screen or autofocus. And I know that the more features they pack into a camera, the more it feels like the quality of the last has fallen, but it hasn't. If the camera was fine for you 1 year ago, it's probably gonna be fine for you right now. So, with that said, let's go look at some files and do some pixel peeping and see if this camera is worth the upgrade from the M10P or the M10 series or your first Leica. Let's go check it out. All right, so we're at the desk and I want to talk about a couple things before we get started. Look at some files, do some pixel peeping, and talk about noise and whatnot on this camera. First things first, I got a pod mic, so I'm gonna switch over to this once you start seeing the screen recordings and you guys can tell me how this sounds. The reason why I invested in this is because I was thinking about doing some live streams with you guys. If you're interested in that, I'm gonna try and figure out what the format is for the live streams. I was thinking maybe I would take 3 photos a week and we could stream maybe Friday, Saturday nights, and I would edit those 3 photos and we can just chat and talk about whatever you guys want to talk about while I edit your photos and show you my color grading. That is something that people have always been interested in since the day I started my YouTube channel about selling presets. I'm not sure I'll end up selling presets, but I can talk about how I edit and maybe you guys can learn a couple things while I go through your photos and edit them. So if that's something you're interested in, drop a comment down below, hit the like button, and we can start moving on something like that. If you have some other ideas, some formats for a live stream video, please also drop those. Anything is welcome. And let's get into looking at some of these photos now. I'm gonna open up Capture One here. Okay, so, all right, so we got Capture One open here. And again, I wanna try and make this as short and sweet as possible. So there's 3 things I really wanna talk about that I like with this camera. And obviously, number 1 is the resolution. One of the benefits for me with the resolution is that shooting with the SL2 and the Q2 on the last couple of jobs that I shot, they sent me loaners of those cameras working with 40 megapixel files. When you create a preset, when you edit one photo and you copy and paste those presets and slap them on another, with the 40 megapixel files, it just works. That's one of the benefits of having extra resolution, shooting 50 megapixels, 100 megapixels. When you're doing intense color editing, the files tend to handle it a little bit better and the colors don't break down. That's one of the benefits for me. So I would take my color grading from the SL2 and I would slap it onto the files here, and I would get almost the same results, so no tinkering necessary. But when I used to take that same color rendering from the SL2 and slap it on my QP, the file would start to break down. The 24 megapixels just couldn't handle the amount of processing that I was putting on those files. With that said, I have to say right now that one of the issues with the M10-R is that Capture One has not been updated yet to handle those DNG files. So we get some really bad issues from the DNGs and the way that they render color. That's not an issue with the Leica camera, it is an issue with Capture One. They've never really communicated well together. I know if I open these up in Lightroom, it would be just fine, but I'm not a Lightroom user, so trying to adapt back to that workflow, I'm just not interested in it. The JPEGs on this camera are actually incredible. So let's look at some of these files real quick. As you can see, this is ISO 1600. So we'll zoom in on this and you guys can see that there is a decent amount of resolution here. We can almost make out the text on this sign. And I'm gonna show you a quick JPEG versus DNG here. So let me go in here and unclick the pink. And then there should be a DNG file associated with this. DNG, JPEG, DNG, JPEG, DNG, JPEG. And as you can see, the colors of the DNG come out a little bit more rich from the gate, but what I'm gonna do is take one of my most intensive color processings for something I shot while in the desert with the famous actor Jason Momoa that you guys might know. And I'm going to show you a preset that I made for this bike stuff that we shot. I'm gonna slap it on here. Now this is a color grade that I used when I shot in the desert with Momoa, which really worked at that time, but it's a very destructive color grading. If I can take it and slap it on the JPEG, we're gonna see how much the JPEGs can handle this type of color grading. Now you can see already what's going on here with the DNG files. The reds are so rich and the oranges are so rich that there's almost a loss of detail, and it's very, very difficult for me to bring that back when I'm working in Capture One with these. As you can see, there's all kinds of issues happening right now with these DNG files. So we're going to go over to the JPEG and see what we can do and if it handles the same way. No, as you can see, the colors are not shifting and jumping around. This is actually working pretty well, and that is surprising because again, these are JPEGs, and the fact that they're this flexible and I can mess around with the colors like this it's pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie. That looks terrible. Okay, so let's look at another file real quick here. So again, you see this very light color grading that I'm doing. The oranges are kind of blowout. That's something with the sensor here. The reds seem to be very hot, and so are the oranges. And that is something that you can definitely combat. This is just the color grading that I have on here that's making it do this, but let's reset this and I'll throw another preset on there and see what that looks like. So black and white looks cool. Oranges are hot in this one. Okay, that's not bad. That's not like a matte preset that I've made. Oranges are blown out, reds are blown out. Let's go to my high-end preset, what I use for a lot of fashion shoots. Film. Yeah, so you can see that the colors that are always hot here tend to be the reds and the oranges. So I might have to make some new presets for these files, actually. But the black and whites seem to work just fine. Look at that, oranges are still, it still knows that that's an orange. Okay, so, as you can see, there is a really nice amount of resolution in these files. You can zoom in for days, but one thing that you're gonna notice here is that this is shot at 1250 ISO. Now, this is something that I was starting to notice as I was shooting with the camera. Anytime I went above or close to 1600 ISO, the files would introduce a lot of noise. And I've never seen that with the M10 or the M10P or even the Type 240 for that matter. My assumption was that the amount of resolution might be revealing something that it hid before. I don't know what that's about. It could be very well that the sensor that is put into this camera, which is the M10 monochrome, which is also a 40 megapixel sensor, has the color filter on it, and it's not as great as dealing with low light as it is on the monochrome, which is totally fine. I had the pleasure of shooting with a legendary photographer the other day, and he also shoots with the M10-R, as does my homie Ruddy Roy, and they love these cameras and they use them professionally. I brought up the ISO issue and the amount of noise that I was noticing at ISO 1600 and how I probably wouldn't shoot above that. And my good friend was happy enough to record a message about noise and photoshopping and pixel peeping. So here's the message.
Okay, we're rolling.
I want to say a few words about technique because so much is stressed about higher ISO ratings and things like that. I believe it's the content, not the form, that drives the photograph. If you've got a great image, it doesn't matter if it has noise or if it's grainy or whatever. I try to make my work not look so good technically because I've noticed that the better you get at Photoshop, the more your work looks like you're good at Photoshop.
Okay, so now that we got that out the way, thank you so much, Ralph Gibson, for sharing your knowledge as always. Every time I'm around that guy, it's incredibly inspiring, and he helps redirect my ship in terms of what I care about when it comes to photography. If I ever get too lost in the sauce with the tech side of things, he helps straighten me out. So I really appreciate him dropping that little nugget of knowledge on you guys. I hope you found some value in that. Let's get back into this real quick. I don't only want to look at a couple more files here before I wrap this up. Here's another JPEG and DNG that I just fired off in the city, and as you can see, there is a fair bit of resolution here, shot at ISO 1600, and we can zoom in on all these little bags and almost make out the text there. Let's zoom in on the JPEG and see what that looks like real quick. Even sharper, so there's some post-sharpening happening with the JPEGs that is not on the DNGs, but I'm noticing more noise on the JPEGs. So what we're gonna do now is just push these files real quick because this is a little underexposed, and we're gonna put the shadows all the way up and see what that looks like on both of these files and see which one is handling them a little bit better. Shadows. Let's put these all the way up and see how much wiggle room we got on this camera. That looks very nice, but now this is revealing an issue with the DNGs, right? Look at what's going on here with this brown paper bag. We're getting some color distortion here. Some of this is not natural. This doesn't make any sense that we have all these green hues in there, and you can see there's some banding going on in the cafe. So look at that. Capture One just can't handle these files. But if I can push the shadows on the JPEG just as far, then why not just use the JPEGs, right? Let's see. And the JPEGs hold up beautifully. I'm even gonna lift the blacks. Oh, now we see we're revealing some noise here. Let's bring the blacks back down. So there is a bit of noise in these files, but you can see this is how the browns should look on this paper bag here, and that is how they look on the DNG file. Again, there will be a fix for this. Right now there is not one. I have no doubt that it's coming soon. I don't really care that much in this moment. I haven't been sharing these files anyway, and they mostly live on Instagram, which gets to my next point. Let's make a quick print and see what that looks like, because they said the extra resolution of the M10-R is really good for prints. I don't have large paper here. I have about 11 by 17, but let's make a print and see what that looks like. Here it is. That's the print. Not a small print, not a very large print, but from what I'm looking at, this thing looks absolutely incredible, especially paired with the right paper, and the added amount of texture and grain in this is really wonderful. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm thinking of a number from 1 to 2,000. If you guys are interested in this print, comment down below. If you get it right, I will ship you this print in the next 2 days. So you can take a look at it for yourself and see what you think about the quality. Anyway, that's pretty much all I gotta say about that. It's been real. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Like, subscribe, comment down below if you're interested in me sending you this print. And I appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.